I have a map or figure from a peer-reviewed research article. I see a big title, the map, and a small caption. So here's my plan of attack. First, I'm going to read the title to understand the focus of the figure. Then I'm going to read the caption to get a little bit more in-depth, and then analyze the map itself, including the legend. So the title is Dead Zones in Coastal Ecosystems. So I can understand that this map is going to focus on A, coastal ecosystems, which are water related, and I can already see there's a focus around the coastlines of the map, and B, dead zones, which of course seems like not a good kind of place where life is probably extremely low or even completely absent. Now onto the caption. The caption gives a good summary of the information presented in the map, so I know what to focus on. Researchers overlaid the locations of more than 400 hypoxic systems linked to eutrophication on a map of the global human footprint. Whew. Okay, so I'm really realizing that there was a lot of complicated words, and this caption didn't really sink into my head. So I'm going to reread it and make sure I'm focused and not letting my mind wander. I also want to look out for new or important vocabulary. Researchers overlaid the locations of more than 400 hypoxic systems. Okay, hypoxic's a new word to me, so I'm going to highlight that. I don't know the word offhand, but I do know the root oxic means harmful, like toxic, and the root hypo means like extra or super, like hyperactive. So I'm going to make an educated guess that this word means that the water systems are very toxic or maybe even deadly, which makes sense since the article title refers to dead zones. I should write a little makeshift definition here on the side so I don't forget. Okay. Researchers overlaid the locations of more than 400 hypoxic systems linked to eutrophication. Now that's a pretty big word, but I do remember hearing it before in my previous biology studies and kind of remember what it means. I should Google that word real quick though, just to double check. Well, it looks like my understanding of the word is correct, so I'm going to continue. Eutrophication on a map of the global human footprint. Now I do know this phrase, but it's in quotations, so I think it's probably important, and I'm going to highlight that. Okay, so now I'm going to reread the caption a third time since I attacked some of these big words. Researchers overlaid the locations of 400 hypoxic systems linked to eutrophication on a map of the global human footprint. So because this is kind of a tough sentence, I want to set apart the two main subjects to focus on for the map so that it's visually easy to refer back to while analyzing the map. So here's the first one, and I'm going to box it off. 400 hypoxic systems linked to eutrophication. And here's the second, global human footprint. Now I'm going to summarize or rephrase the caption in less complicated words. Basically, the map shows locations of very toxic places on the coast as well as human impact. Most likely, I'll see a relationship between these two things since the caption mentions overlaying the data. I should focus on that. So the first thing to look on the map is always the legend. The first legend title says hypoxic systems. Now there's that vocab word I defined earlier, and the second legend title says human footprint. So these two data sets agree with those two subjects I boxed off, and I want to make sure to focus on that relationship between the two data sets. Looking back at the legend for hypoxic systems, it doesn't have a measurement scale or units, but it does have this dot symbol next to it, which kind of looks like the ones that are on road maps. That marks cities or towns. So I think that it probably just marks locations and doesn't give any data beyond that. The legend for human footprint, on the other hand, has a scale with numbers and colors. Green with the low numbers, red and purple with the high numbers. But there's still no specific measurement units. I can see, however, that the scale goes from 1 to 100. So my assumption is that maybe the numbers represent percentages. Maybe that's explained in the article itself. So on the map, I can see that these green areas show low amounts of footprint, and these areas show high amounts of footprint. So now I can apply the legend information to the map itself to try and make some inferences and connections. First thing I notice are these biggest clumps of dots around what I already know to be the eastern US and Europe. I also see a handful around North Asia, maybe that's Russia, some in the Middle East, North and South America, and Western US. I also see that the green areas are mostly northern areas of the world where I assume it's extremely cold and not a lot of people live. Also the major deserts of the world. Here's the Sahara and the Australian outback. This looks like the Amazon rainforest. The darkest areas with the highest amount of human footprint seem to be in Europe, Asia, and the eastern US. And this kind of makes sense to me because I know that there are large populations in these areas. Now that I've pointed out to myself the big pieces of data, I can make some predictions about what this data is telling me and what the researchers probably focus on in the article. And it's important to remember that these inferences are just that and not actual data. So I noticed the areas where the most dense concentrations of hypoxic systems are also have a high global footprint. So I probably can infer that there's a high correlation or connection between human impact and these dead zones. I bet the researchers present that correlation in this paper as well. I'm also guessing that they imply, as I'm kind of already thinking myself based on that relationship, that human impact may be a cause of these hypoxic systems. I do have a few questions though. I'm noticing that some of the other areas of high human footprint don't have dense clusters of hypoxic systems. Here, India has a pretty high human footprint, but only one hypoxic system. Also, I would expect more hypoxic systems in these areas of Asia, Central America, and Africa. I'm noticing that these areas aren't in what is considered Western culture areas. So I wonder if this is because there really aren't these hypoxic systems there, or if, and I think this is more likely, the data just hasn't been collected for these areas. Maybe the local scientists just haven't focused on the subject, or there's some political reason. I don't know, but it's something to keep in mind. So to summarize this map of information, it basically shows a potential relationship between human impact and hypoxic systems. It seems like there's a solid connection and probably also causation we can consider. There's still a few questions though, so if I decide to use this data myself, I want to make sure to keep that in mind.